this session on all the platforms that are available. Welcome to another installment of the talk with the Speaker of Council. Ladies and gentlemen, it has indeed been a long year. As we begin to take stock of and reflect on 2020, I think we all agree that COVID-19 pandemic has affected the entire globe and continues to alter life as we know it. For most, if not all of us, it has been a very frustrating and difficult year. Some have lost their source of income, be it in the form of employment or business ventures. Others have sadly lost loved ones due to COVID-19, and some have suffered by having contracted the disease. The COVID-19 pandemic, ladies and gentlemen, has fallen hardest not just on cities, but on poorer, overcrowded neighborhoods, and we note the mental strife owed to this pandemic. Once in our previous engagements, we have touched on different aspects of how the pandemic has affected our way of life. For example, the way we bury, the way we consume medicine, especially traditional versus Western medicine, how COVID-19 has affected women, how it will shape future cities, etc. We have not spoken about how it has affected the world of work. Ladies and gentlemen, when the hard lockdown was announced back in March, the first challenge that the city had to contend with was ensuring that service delivery is not severely affected and that core services were not disrupted. In addressing this challenge, however, we could not overlook the fact that service delivery is driven by people. Those people make up the staff complement of the city, and those people are people first before they are their roles. The world of work has been profoundly impacted by coronavirus. We have had to learn how to conduct meetings through Microsoft Teams, through Zoom. We have had to familiarize ourselves with working from home, connecting Goma 3G and 4Gs. Some of us who have had to conduct a large council meeting made up of 265 councillors virtually have been forced to learn the tech world and understand it. Basically, we as leaders, as workers, as organizations have had to adapt the new norm in the workplace. But what does that entail? Today's topic seeks to answer just that. I'm very honored, ladies and gentlemen, to host our guests today who are very knowledgeable in this field. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce our panel, and we'll start with the MMC who is responsible for Abasebenzi in the city of Johannesburg. She is Councillor Loyiso Masuku, the member of the Mayoral Committee, MMC for Group Corporate and Shared Services in the city of Johannesburg. MMC Masuku holds a degree from the Technikon of Wits with a certified background in gender mainstreaming in the public service, a certificate in municipal leaders, media and stakeholder engagement, and is currently pursuing a postgraduate diploma with the University of Johannesburg, majoring in African Studies and Public Policy. MMC Masuku joined the city of Johannesburg in August 2016 as a PR councillor, serving as a committee member for Community Development and Municipal Public Accounts Committee. She has experience that straddles the local and provincial spheres of government, both as a public servant and a public representative. MMC Masuku is committed to steering the ship full of the city's workforce in the right direction by ensuring that the city has sufficient capacity to deliver on its mandate, as articulated by the government of local unity. Welcome, MMC Masuku. We are very happy to have you on this platform. We also have MMC Khoza, who is now formally the MMC of Economic Development, is no stranger to the city. Congratulations, MMC Khoza, on your new appointment as the MMC Economic Development. MMC Khoza is the former MMC for Development Planning in the city of Johannesburg, but prior to that, still within the city, he was appointed Corporate and Business Planning Specialist in 2004, responsible for long-term business planning for city departments and municipal-owned entities. He has a number of degrees under his belt, including a Master of Arts and a BA Honours in Political Science, all from Wits University. As a student, Khoza was awarded the G.A. Dennett Scholarship for Academic Excellence and a Postgraduate Merit Award. MMC Khoza has a wealth of experience in the financial and public sectors as an Executive Director at the Banking Association of South Africa and at Business Unity South Africa, IBUSA. He also worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers. He believes the fourth industrial revolution is paramount in the strategy to improve service delivery. MMC Khoza, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Finally, I am honored to introduce the guest that I'm going to hand over to in a moment, who will usher us into the discussion, which is none other than Mr. Dylan Govender. Mr. Govender is a partner leading the PwC Advisory HR Transformation Integrated Solution Practice across South Africa, where he drives the government and public sector industry sector nationally. He has more than 20 years of experience in driving business transformation across process, people, learning and technology across a number of sectors. Before joining PwC, Dylan occupied a number of senior positions with government and the higher education sector, and also functioned as an academic in the area of management and leadership at UNISA. He has presented a number of papers at national and international conferences, and also published a series of articles during his stint as an academic. He has also done work in Kenya, Mauritius, and Tanzania while with PwC. He is also well-traveled globally and facilitated a number of initiatives with PwC in UK, Denmark, Netherlands, etc. He has served on the board of directors of IPM in South Africa from 2012 to 2014, and now serves on the board of the South Board of People Practitioners, SABPP, since 2018. He is an associate of the Institute of Directors in South Africa and is a registered and accredited master HR practitioner with the SABPP. Mr. Govender, welcome to our platform, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Welcome to our regulars, Dr. Fundile Nyati, who is our partner. And, okay, am I still audible?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
All right, thank you. Welcome to our regulars, Dr. Fundile Nyati, who is our partner and who assists us in putting these shows together. Thank you very much for your continuous support, Dr. Nyati. Welcome to the Chair of Chairs, Councillor Salfina Mulauzi, who is the second in charge as a Deputy Speaker. Welcome to all the leaders inside the meeting and all the viewers watching on our platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in as always. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get down to business. Mr. Govender, let me begin with yourself. I would like for you to give us a background or context into what the workplace has been prior COVID-19 and what are the transitional changes we are facing given that we are headed towards a post-COVID-19 period. What are the new skills that are anticipated in this new world that is imminent? Over to you, Mr. Govender.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much once again for this opportunity. I really feel privileged to be presenting at this elite forum, and certainly will share some insights and some thoughts, not just from PwC in the South African context, but also globally as well. Madam Speaker, I'm just going to put my camera off so that I don't disrupt the presentation. I do have a couple of slides which I will walk you through, specifically talking to your request in terms of what you've outlined. Once again, thank you very much, colleagues, for this opportunity as well. And Madam Speaker, I just want to check with you very quickly in terms of time allocation. I do have a couple of slides to cover all those areas you've uttered a few minutes ago. Can I just have an indication, Madam Speaker?
Our timekeeper is simple. We are intended to conclude the discussion at 5:30. Sipho, how much time does Mr. Govender have?
Madam, I think about 10 minutes should be sufficient, if that's okay.
Okay. Are you okay with 10 minutes, Mr. Govender?
I think I should be fine, but I've just got two parts to the actual slides and the presentation, Madam Speaker. I was just looking at about 20 minutes, and I'm just wondering if that's not going to upset or disrupt your timing, colleagues.
Madam Speaker,
okay,
can I come in here, please?
Yes, Nhlaka.
We had allocated about 15-20 minutes to PwC, so if I can please request on their behalf that we give them the time allocated to them.
Okay, I was just about to say, okay, it's fine. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
You have the
Excellent.
time, Mr. Govender.
Lovely. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you once again for this wonderful opportunity. So, colleagues, I think I'm going to jump straight into it in the interest of time. You'd see that the first slide talks of new world, new skills. And maybe just two lines in terms of the context. We as PwC have obviously done a lot of work, a lot of research, as I said, globally across Africa in terms of what does this future of work look like? What are the new skills that are required? How do we change? How do we diversify? What are the key challenges that presents itself for a number of institutions, and obviously cities being central to that kind of deliberation as well. So I think I'm going to jump straight into it, Madam Speaker, and just let's just quickly reflect. Where are we? Now, we've all started to put a lot of energy and effort in terms of what COVID and what lockdown has done. But I think what's important to note, to colleagues, is that the workforce was already or has already been disrupted some time back, even before COVID-19 had embarked and come to our doorstep. So you'll see on the left-hand side, colleagues, is that there's some statistics that we quote. We conduct this annual global people CEO survey globally, and some of the results coming through. I've just picked on three which are relevant for this session. 74% of CEOs are concerned about the availability of key skills given where the future of work is going. 53% of workers believe that automation will significantly change their job or make it obsolete in the next 10 years. And only 18% of CEOs have significant progress. There's only 18% that have a plan, a game plan in terms of what they're going to do. Now, certainly COVID-19 has accelerated or exacerbated the situation. But if you look at some of the disruptors on the right-hand side, it's around the whole diversity and inclusivity. It's around the skills shortage. It's around the gig economy that we talk of, the economic pressures, and I can go on and on. But let's get into some of the details. And I'm going to jump into the next slide very quickly. We refer to this as the couple of disruptors that we see happening globally. And these disruptors are really around 5 areas. The first one is asymmetry. We see increasing wealth disparity between the rich and the poor, the have and the have-nots, and almost an erosion of the middle class. And it's clearly evident not just globally, but in the South African context and across Africa. The second one is, and I will touch more about it, colleagues, is around the disruption of technology. Now, technology has disrupted our lives, our personal lives, is disrupted organizations in terms of how they conduct and how they operate. It's not business as usual. In terms of age, we're seeing, this whole demographic pressure on businesses. I mean, it's quite interesting that one of the studies showed that Africa as a continent will have the most youthful population compared to any other continent across the globe in 2030. And what does that mean? What does it mean for organizations, institutions? What does it mean for cities? We've seen polarization break down in global consensus. We've seen the world powers and how that starts to shift. But I think important for me on this slide, colleagues, is also we've seen, there's declining confidence in institutions that would normally be underpinning society from a trust perspective. So obviously, from a citizen perspective, we're seeing the whole element of trust globally seem to diminish. And that is not just a trend in the South African context, it is global. If I can jump into the next slide. So we've had our economists from PwC do a lot of studies working with national government over the recent months during lockdown, during COVID-19, and some of the kind of projections that have been put on the table into 2020 and moving into 2021, we see the GDP declining between 8.3 and 10.6%. That's quite a significant amount. We're seeing job losses increasing to another 1.2 to 1.6 million, in addition to what we're already seeing on the ground. We're seeing unemployment rate increases to almost another 34 to 36%. This is over and above the problem that we've already had in the country around unemployment. I say to colleagues of mine, we sit with the pandemic around COVID-19, but we've always had a perpetuating endemic in this country, and we're seeing that across Africa, and that is around unemployment. So COVID-19 is not the only crisis, colleagues. Organizations will have to face many other crises in terms of where they're going, specifically around fourth industrial revolution. What does it mean in terms of the geopolitical events happening? We're seeing cyber attacks and a whole range of other kind of scenarios that are creating, or rather impacting on the economy and also on institutions as well. I'm going to jump to the next slide to get into some of the more details. So let's talk technologies very quickly. As PwC, we've done a study. There's probably thousands, but there's about 250 technologies that seem to be kind of almost impacting all business. We've looked at that and looked in the South African context, working with our experts to say, which are the top 8 technologies that will disrupt many institutions, organizations, and certainly cities as well. And we've come up with these 8 technologies that are the big disruptors in the workplace. And I'll go into a little more detail on this a little later, but they stretch from artificial intelligence right down to 3D printing, into virtual reality, robotics, and all this. I'll show you the relevance from a city perspective in one of the slides later. But certainly we see these as the 8 big disruptors for cities of the future, in terms of where local government, where national and provincial government is going, that one needs to take due consideration of. I'm going to jump to the next slide. And on the next slide, what I'd like to do, Madam Speaker, with your permission, I've got my colleague who's running with the actual presentation for me. We've got something called a Mentimeter, and I'd like to get some input from colleagues on the call. We would drop a kind of a link into the chat room. If you can just click onto the link, colleagues, it'll take you straight into a particular screen. And what we'd like to know is, which technology do you think, based on your expertise and experience of working with the city and working within this context, that you think will have the greatest impact on the future of COJ? And we'd like to see what comes out from that exercise, Madam Speaker.
Okay, colleagues, did you all receive the link?
Yes, Madam, it's on.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
And maybe to the colleagues, I've just shared a few examples, but I'd like to know from you, which ones do you see that would be the great disruptors? And oh, here we go. So I see it coming through. Cell phones, absolutely. Mobile device is the way to go. Yeah, the mobile phones. Many of the countries are starting. Yes, IoT, absolutely. Billing operations, yeah, in terms of the automation around billing operations and how it drives efficiencies, would have a great impact. Yeah, I see a lot of people on the mobile. And it's quite interesting. Every technology that one embarks on has to have a mobile platform to it, because people carry their mobiles and do all the applications on phones on their mobiles. Internet connectivity and data, yes, certainly would impact. That's a good one as well. IoT is the backbone, absolutely. Anything else? What about, and maybe just a question out there, what about drone technology? Do you see that around virtual reality? Do you see it impacting on where the city is going? Okay, there we go, drones. And I'll show you the impact on these things. These are not just technology that exists far away from the South African context. It's certainly happening in major cities. We're seeing some progressive cities making huge impact in using technology, and what impact is having on service delivery as well. VR and AR, absolutely. So colleagues, I'm going to jump out in the interest of time. I guess there's many others as well, but we'll share this with you. I'm going to jump over to the next slide. And thank you very much for that input, because I think it starts to inform the next couple of slides that I have as well. So we talk technology. While we're on the theme of technology, technology has always come about. We've had the first, second, and the third industrial revolution. So what has happened during that time? Throughout history, we've been taught that technology, yes, will disrupt jobs, but what it does, it creates new opportunities, colleague. It creates new opportunities. As soon as we start seeing new technological developments, innovation and creativity kicks in, and we start to create other jobs, looking at other skills that are required as well. And this is, this is what the World Bank has predicted as well in the 2019 report as well. So I'm going to jump over to the next slide. All right, so these are two schools of thought, colleagues. One is around stimulating growth through economic interventions, and I'm glad the MMC for economic development is on the panel as well. This is great, but sometimes we don't have full control over the economic conditions. We can do a lot to stimulate it, but there's lots of other factors that kick in. So the other school of thought is, what about stimulating an environment conducive for growth by looking at the skills, the people? And Madam Speaker, I'm glad you mentioned early on, you spoke of, it's people first before you give them a role. And that's absolutely spot on, because it's about really focusing on the new skills and interventions that are required for people to become innovative, create jobs for themselves and for others, and to help in terms of the GDP growth as well. So there's almost this two dichotomy we find ourselves in, and both are equally important, but it can't be one over the other as well. But we certainly have much more control as a city to make sure we empower our people to have the right skills and to be multi-skilled to survive in this new world of work. I'm going to jump over to the next slide. Okay, colleagues, so Madam Speaker, you mentioned what are the new skills that are required in this fourth industrial revolution in terms of the way the world is going, and let's park COVID-19 for a minute. Critical thinking is something which we've taken for granted. We're working with lots of universities and schools, and we're saying to them, you need to change your curriculum to infuse it with critical thinking. Because what we've seen, and we work with a lot of youngsters coming out of tertiary education, that's not necessarily embedded in their thinking or in the teachings of institutions. The whole aspect around creative thinking and innovative ideas is critical. I mean, as you get to tasks that are being automated, how do we create new opportunities? It's around creative and innovative thinking and ways of doing things. The third one is quite important for me, is around learning to learn, but it's also learning to unlearn and relearn, because we come through through a process of learning through our own context, our backgrounds, and being in education institutions. But when we come to the real world, we see there's many things that are different from what we've learned and been scholared in. And there's a need to start unlearning some of that and relearning some new skills that are required. The whole concept around adaptability is very critical. One needs to be adaptable at all times, because you need to be versatile, and we use the concept agile. It's about being agile at all times as well. The whole concept about empathy and self-efficacy is critical. It's about taking personal responsibility, and we see that as a critical skill going forward. Now, you may ask me, what is fusion skills? Fusion skills is really moving people out of the silo mentality. So for an example, if I'm at City and I'm working in procurement, as an example, I need to have a full appreciation of how it touches base with contract management, how it links into finance, how does it link into the marketing, how does all these loose ends fit together, and you need a broader understanding of what impact this has on service delivery. And that's what fusion skills is about. You cannot stay with your own discipline and think the world is operating in isolation from where you are. The whole concept of global competency is around the whole notion of globalization. So having an understanding of what's happening globally, but bringing it to a local context and seeing how it fits in a practical sense as well. And the practical and physical skills are quite self-explanatory. I'm not going to touch on that one. Let's jump to the next slide, Elizabeth. So colleagues, there is some real examples. So we've done a lot of research with some of the cities that have progressed well, and this whole concept of smart cities. So what does that entail? And you've touched on some of the aspects around technology. So if you look at artificial intelligence, one of the things that is quite interesting is that artificial intelligence is used in terms of adjustments on street lights, traffic lights, congestion, which obviously is quite labor intensive at the moment, but there's a huge move towards using artificial intelligence. The whole concept about robotics around waste collection for repair of faulty parts seems to be now taking over. And I'll jump to a few. If you look at 3D printing as an example, we're seeing 3D printing becoming critical in terms of, for example, creating solar panels, which is being, where 3D printing is being used extensively for this. And you can see the impact it'll have on the environment, but also in terms of economic productivity as well. And I think somebody touched on in smart metering and so forth. Blockchain is certainly a technology that seems to be quite robust in making those little connections and making it seamless for cities to operate in a very efficient manner. I won't touch upon all, colleagues. I'll just jump to the next slide to bring it more towards, I guess, some of the innovative things that we talk of technological advances of the fourth industrial revolution. It poses huge potential, colleagues. And I guess, one asks the question, where do you start? I guess some of the recommendations that we would propose in terms of a starting point or a point of departure would be, city development strategies. So identify quick wins, demonstrate environmental value and applicability. There's a need to look at fourth industrial revolution special projects, and in terms of what are the quick wins that COJ can take and embark on. The whole concept around creating urban and national government innovation units. We're seeing most of the progressive cities across the globe. We're seeing Singapore, we're seeing Hong Kong. That's kind of creating hubs to be able to, for people to be taken out, to put into incubators and come up with smart ideas in terms of how do we respond to the whole fourth industrial revolution. It's almost an act of agenda or of a change and balancing visionary ambitions with being pragmatic and looking at risk and cost as well. If I can touch, and I won't touch on all, Madam Speaker, I'll just touch on a few, but if you look at skills and retraining, I think it poses a wonderful opportunity for COJ, who's an employer of a number of people, to embark on this exercise of looking at what are the skills required for fourth industrial revolution, and importantly, post-COVID, what are the skills and what are the new skills that are required? So if you have somebody that's a specialist in procurement, and I use that as an example, Madam Speaker, that is one key skill that's required to perform a role or perform a job. But however, there's other skills like understanding big data. It's about understanding a bit of coding. It's understanding around the managing people in troubled times like COVID. Those are the other key skills that are required and which city like COJ need to embark on as well. So those are just a couple of key recommendations as starting points. There's a lot of detail that sit under this, colleagues. I will share the presentation as well as some of the details that sit under this as well. If we can jump to the next slide, Elizabeth. So in challenging times, and what are the challenges, in terms of fourth industrial revolution, but more importantly, in terms of post-COVID as well. As the fourth industrial revolution progresses, cities will increasingly use smart technologies. I think we know that. But what does that bring about? It brings about huge challenges, and as you can see on the left-hand side. Let me take a couple. If you're looking at energy in terms of intensity, fourth industrial revolution will mean an increase in number of devices, increase in number of sensors, increase in the number of appliances that are being used, which obviously will consume a lot of energy, as one example. But the opportunity here is to start promoting renewable energy. And I guess there's a number of other examples as well. If I jump to the whole the concept around increased migration, we've seen, with opportunities in the city, a lot of people from rural areas start to flock into the city because that's where the jobs are. So cities are even more attractive for economic opportunities, leading to housing and infrastructure issues and decreasing development in rural areas because the focus gets to be on the cities and almost the urban areas. But I think the opportunity there, once again, colleagues, is about improving digital access in rural areas to promote economic development, using data from smart city to plan for sustainable urban development as well. So it poses huge, and I'm using two examples, colleagues. I think these particular challenges, which are the real challenges that fourth industrial revolution and COVID, post-COVID would present one with, also presents equally so huge opportunities in terms of where the cities can embark and work on these particular areas as well. Elizabeth, let's jump to the next slide. So the future of workplaces post-COVID. Let's look at some of the details and the practical stuff of what are some of the progressive cities doing across the globe, and maybe some lessons to be learned. I think the first thing is, colleagues, is around building an holistic plan to address ongoing employee health and safety requirements. And we refer to that as protect and secure. Now, I assume people are starting to come back into the workplace, but it can't be business as usual. Something needs to be done differently. So the second block talks about customizing the returning employee roadmap. And I'll delve a little bit deeper in there, but it's really about what kind of roadmap do we create in terms of as people start to come in their numbers back into the workplace, because it can't be, as I say, business as usual. And that whole concept is about returning and adapting. The next concept is really about reinstating and redeploying. And I think the city has a huge responsibility here, is to evaluate your people strategy processes for returning to workforce. We as PwC colleagues are no exception. We've got probably around about 4,500 to 5,000 people at any given time in that large building of ours. Under normal circumstances, it's already a hot spot. So we needed to work through this entire process ourselves. And we're going through that, and we've started to do things very differently as well. You'd see on the fourth bullet is about continually collecting insights and remaining connected to the workforce needs. I think one of the challenges from a psychological perspective is that people are working virtually, yes, still being productive, but they feel a sense of being disengaged. Humans always want a sense of affiliation to an organization, to an employer, where they could feel wanted and be part of a team and part of a bigger picture. And that's something important, which we started to put a lot of energy and focus on. Elizabeth, can we jump to the next slide? So, colleagues, I'm not going to go through the details. There's a lot of details, but it's the first thing is around protecting your people. It's around the safety, and I guess you've taken a lot of measures, and that is not just measures for now, but will continue to stay measures as we move into post-lockdown, as we move into the new year as well. About securing the workplace, I think it's important about the redesign of the office space in terms of square footage, in terms of looking at your partners that you have, in terms of, to ensure service delivery. How do you put different protocols in place for your partners? And there's definitely a need to refresh policies and procedures. The policies and procedures that we all have, including PwC colleagues, did not see COVID-19 coming. Nobody did see it coming. So we had to revisit that entire policies and procedures to make sure that it's user-friendly, it's where we can still have high productivity and performance, but at the same time looking at the safety of our people. We jump over, Elizabeth. So I guess the next part is about customizing the returning employee roadmap through sequence re-entry. Now this doesn't happen automatic, and I guess COJ, as I said, is the employer of a number of people, and you're getting people that are traveling distances to get to work as well. But it's important to start to evaluate your critical business needs and develop a plan to redeploy your workers as well. Certain people can work obviously virtually and be able to take calls, but obviously what about in the practical sense around repairs, around people that need to be on the ground to be able to work? How do you make sure you actually structure that workforce in such a way that you don't drop productivity or performance and in terms of service delivery, but be able to also look at the safety of your people? It's about adopting new ways of working. And with that, Madam Speaker, you mentioned around becoming more digitally savvy, and I think that's important because that is the norm. And to become digitally savvy, it's not about something nice to have, it's a need to have in terms of where we find ourselves post-COVID. Maintaining productivity. Now, it's quite interesting. Everybody wants to be, making sure we don't drop productivity. We still have sight of productivity. We still have sight around service delivery. Are we doing what we need to do? It becomes a little bit difficult, colleagues, when people are not in an office where you can have conversation and check performance, check the spreadsheets, check where things are. It's about doing it virtually. So there's been now a new focus in terms of how do I ensure people are still performing at a level I require them and quite engaged in what they need to do as well. Elizabeth, if you can jump. I think evaluating, and I've mentioned this already, it's very critical for COJ to start evaluating your people strategy and processes for returning to work. It's about looking at, what are your strategic outcomes and what are some of the solutions and accelerators. Now, you may not be occupying all your office space, your boardrooms, but I think there's a wonderful opportunity for COJ to look at what are some of the accelerators that one needs to invest in that will become not just for post-COVID, but where the new world of work is going, to invest in those applications and solutions to make life more effective and efficient for people that's in the office as well as people on the outskirts that dial in virtually as well. Let's jump to the next one, Elizabeth. So I guess the whole thing around key insights. Now you see it's around the empathy about being courageous as leaders in the organization. And this is not just applicable for cities or COJ, but it's applicable to many organizations. And as I said, right across government, public sector, as well as in other sectors as well. It's quite interesting on the right-hand side, engage the team. And I spoke of the psychological disparity that people are feeling. We're seeing that. We're seeing more people going into depression, more people feeling burnout, yet they're not in the office. So it's important for leadership to make sure they're engaging and stay engaged with their team. And act with urgency is another critical one as well. One needs to take decisions now in terms of what are the strategies going to be, use the future to shape the present. And it's about acting deliberately around some of those strategies. There's lots of details that sit under this, colleagues, which I won't share and get into given the time constraints. But let's jump to the next slide, Elizabeth. So obviously, in terms of where the current state, there's this whole shift in real estate to remote working model. So one needs to look at the whole integrated standard open office layout. How does that change? And there has to be a deliberate focus, because we've done that as PwC. We've seen the progressive cities as well. I mean, Hong Kong has done amazingly in terms of looking at the whole setup of offices and how do we make sure we have productive staff, but still making sure that we stay within the protocols of what COVID-19 demands of us to keep our employees safe as well. Elizabeth, we can jump to the next one. So this is quite a busy slide, but I guess it's about leadership. It's about COJ almost having a visual helicopter vision of where staff are, what is the productivity looking like, what are the policies that support this, and it's a whole range of different way of working. Now this slide is quite comprehensive, but I can tell you the one thing is that it's about almost investing in some of these accelerators, as we refer to make life easy working virtually. We use Microsoft Teams, we use Zoom. Those are some of the platforms but there's much more other platforms. And I'm so glad that colleagues spoke of the mobile. The mobile is the powerful devices. What are the other dashboards that one can have insights and have data on the phone to make key decisions while your team or your staff members are sitting all over and not necessarily in one place? So how do you cannot have 20 meetings, but what you can do is almost be able to communicate quite swiftly with them. And I'm talking beyond just having an app. I'm talking about looking at systems that can generate insights and data for one to make decisions quite rapidly as well. Elizabeth, if we can jump to the next slide. I think, colleagues, I just want to pause on this one for a second. Madam Speaker, we as PwC, we've taken a decision globally, and certainly a lot of our clients have taken advantage of this. We are offering this learning app free worldwide. And one may ask, why are we doing this? Because we realize that we've developed this magnificent app, but we've used it for PwC internally. But we said, hang on, our clients could really do this. And what it is, colleagues, it's really an app which you can download from the App Store or from Google Play. And this is available till next year, June. And what it does is almost looks at your digital fitness, it gives you a rating around score. But that's not the important part, colleagues. What our clients are finding extremely useful, it has embedded in it is content. And this content is like little videos for helping people to understand and climb up the ladder in terms of the digital fitness assessment. And that almost gives you, and I found it very useful, because what it does, it allows you to watch a video while you're standing in a queue to almost up your skill around understanding data, for an example, or understanding decision making in a very practical sense, We find it to be very useful, and it kind of gives you a narrative around what your digital aptitude or digital fitness is, which will be probably quite useful. And I encouraged, Madam Speaker, I encourage COJ to take full value of what this is, and just use it, and please feel free, because with millions of people that, there's job losses on the table, and overnight shift to remote working for many organizations, the world needs new skills. But how do we know what skills and where our digital aptitude is by doing this kind of assessment. Elizabeth, if you can jump to the next slide. So I'm going to pause here, Madam Chair. I know I went quite rapidly because I'm mindful there's other speakers as well. And I maybe just pause, Madam Speaker, and maybe hand back to you. And I'm not sure if you'd like to facilitate any questions, or we leave that to the end. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Wow, thank you very much, Dylan. Thank you so much for that powerful and informative presentation indeed. You spoke about different aspects, the big disruptors, the upskilling as an economic investment. I'm sure that colleagues and panelists would like to probe more questions, perhaps at the end of the presentations. But thank you so much for that powerful presentation. MMC Khoza, now that Dylan has given us some context, I would like to narrow it down closer to home. We have seen the devastation that COVID-19 has caused globally, nationally, provincially, and also in our city, and also the big disruptors that he has presented. People have lost jobs, they have lost their business and their investments. The city's revenue has also been affected. Livelihoods have been threatened. I would like to drill down, MMC, and ask you to perhaps share with us what impact the lockdown has had on the economy of the city of Johannesburg in particular.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. When I received correspondence from your office, I realized that you had congratulated me because it was my second day in this portfolio. So I was hoping that you were giving me advice in terms of how to approach this position. But you shocked me by asking me to stand in front of this esteemed panel. But I looked on the positives. And I looked on the positives, and I realized that actually it's an excellent opportunity, because in the event that I misspoke, I can always blame my relative youth in this position. So thank you very much for inviting me. Just to start by saying, I think it's fair to say that COVID did not visit us in the midst of major economic activity happening in the country. There was a particular trajectory that was quite concerning for many of us. The economy was not growing as we had anticipated. It was declining growth in our midst, rising debt levels, loss of jobs, and growing inequality. So when COVID came, it actually exacerbated all the problems that we had. It's worth reminding that the breakthrough in 1994 to date has not been able to deal with the three challenges that we face as a country: inequality, poverty, and unemployment. And those problems have been with us for centuries. Whilst there was excitement about 1994, and there was growth that was experienced in the first 10, 15 years of our democracy, it's fair to say that in the last 10 years of our democracy, we saw major reversals leading to declining revenues, declining growth, loss of jobs, and growing inequality. So that is the context that prevailed when the COVID-19 pandemic came to our shores. At local level, it's fair to say that the pandemic, when it came, and the lockdown that resulted thereof, So towns and cities and rural areas all suffering human and economic consequences of the shutdown of their economies. In the city of Johannesburg, of course, being the commercial center of the country and the continent, there were business failures, rising unemployment, loss of livelihoods, and increasing poverty among consequences expected to materialize. Governments, of course, had to step in, and our own city had to step in to mitigate the worst of the impact of the lockdown on businesses and households. But all those interventions did not stop the damage being done to our businesses and individuals in the city of Johannesburg. Sorry, Madam Speaker, I don't know what's happening, but I hope that you can hear me. Madam Speaker, there's something on my screen. Am I still audible?
You are still
Yes,
audible.
You are still audible.
you are still audible, MMC.
Thank you very much. So the negative impact of the April to June 2020 COVID-19 lockdown on the economy of South Africa and the city of Johannesburg came at a time when there had been nearly a decade-long slowing trend in economic growth in the country. This trend was the result of both domestic and international factors of political, economic, and social origin, which impaired the growth, performance, and eroded the potential growth of the economy. Just by way of summary, the COVID impacted on the production side. And this is important because most of the time, when there are crises, they are either on the supply side or on the demand side. But the one that we are facing right now actually is on both the supply and demand side of the economy. And the impact on the production side arose as a result of lockdown impacting on workforce availability for goods and services, distribution activities, disruption of supply and distribution chains, shortages of materials and cost of inventory and accumulation, and cost of compliance with COVID-19 related workplace health and safety measures, and of course, cash flow problems. On the expenditure side of the economy, the lockdown resulted on demand in export markets, mobility restrictions on domestic consumers, impacting access to retail outlets, risk-averse personal behavior, and limitations on sales hours by outlets still allowed to trade. And of course, we witnessed the closure of international borders and erratic behaviors on our financial and stock markets. All these problems, Madam Speaker and fellow panelists, have occasioned a crisis in our economy, both in terms of social and economic inclusion, but also in terms of loss of jobs, closure of businesses, but also desperation amongst our people. And as leadership, our challenge is to respond to that situation. And what is it that we do as the municipality to ensure that the economy recovers? These are some of the measures that we think are important going forward. The first one, of course, are the measures that we took to mitigate the worst impact of the pandemic on businesses and communities and individuals. These, of course, included tax relief, the release of disaster relief funds, emergency procurement, wage support through UIF funding, and support to small businesses. Of course, some of these are from the municipality, some are from the province, and some are from national government. In particular, the city sought to mitigate the impact of the lockdown on business and individuals through utilization of city resources and infrastructure to access, deploy, and leverage national and provincial relief programs and funding to individuals and businesses in the city. Number two, it was measures to stabilize the economy, address the extreme decline in supply and demand, and protect jobs. We acted as agents of national and provincial government in facilitating rollout of support and relief measures for the worst affected individuals and businesses in Johannesburg. Additionally, amplifying an impact of government relief measures by facilitating and leveraging SMME and informal sector access to concessional finance and donor funding for business and income support for the city. And thirdly, the economic strategy to drive recovery of the economy as the country emerges from the pandemic. I'm glad that our colleague from PwC, who obviously spends more time reflecting on these matters, has already helped us understand some of the things that we can do going forward. But what we've done as a city was really to augment and accelerate implementation of key elements of the city economic strategy, with particular focus on infrastructure development, reduction in the cost of doing business, investment attraction and sector value chain development in the agriculture, manufacturing and business services sectors, promoting localization in the city and export trade development in Africa through the free trade area, and facilitating SMME and informal sector development. And of course, strengthening township economic development through PEZ and community development cooperatives. These, Madam Speaker, are very important because when you've gone through major economic crises, the state generally has to lead, both in terms of putting resources, but also in terms of creating the regulatory and policy spaces to attract investment and to bring excitement back into the economy. Some of the measures for citizens and businesses and economic measures being implemented by the city include property rates deferment and rates payment arrangements, issuance of spaza and informal trade permits, poverty relief through social development initiatives, about 500,000 food parcels for the 2020-21 financial year, increased procurement from Johannesburg-based SMMEs by all departments and municipal entities, and electronic submissions of development plans and land use application. This takes me back to my portfolio before Tuesday, that automating development applications is very important because they make the cost of business cheaper and easier, and turnaround times tend to be improved when you automate your systems. There were also initiatives by the city that, in our view, are quite important, and these are initiatives that will be taken forward as the economy recovers. One being the expansion of Wi-Fi hotspots, reducing tariff increases, procurement of city face masks from SMMEs and hospitality businesses for tourism purposes. Additional support and economic stimulus measures by the city going forward will include infrastructure investment projects in the city, the piloting of mentoring programs for SMMEs in regions of the city, cooperatives and informal trader support fund, and initiation of a tourism sector relief fund with national tourism. We know that there's still a lot to be done, Madam Speaker and fellow panelists, but we believe that as the city of Johannesburg, we need to lead the recovery process. But we do not believe that governments on their own can bring economies back. We do not believe that the government can actually lead the process of recovery. We believe that it's in partnership with the private sector, with the trade union movement, with civil society, that we can begin to see our economy recover from the damaging impact of the different phases of the lockdown. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I want to say that there's growth and there's growth. As the leadership, we obviously want to see economic growth in our city. We want to see innovation in our city. But it's important that we define the kind of growth that we want. And our view is that we want growth that is inclusive. We want growth that includes women. We want growth that includes youth. We want growth that is not specifically located in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. We want growth that is all-encompassing, growth that will be felt by every citizen of the city of Johannesburg. So it's very important that the growth that we initiate is one that is inclusive, because in our view, the liberal democratic order is facing a number of challenges. And I think the speaker from PwC mentioned that all over the world, you are seeing populist parties in Eastern Europe, in Latin America, in Asia, some would say in the United States, winning elections on the basis that immigrants must go, some of them on racist platforms. And it's because, in our view, the system has failed to create opportunities for social mobility. So any growth that does not include our people, Madam Speaker, is not sustainable, because our people will revolt against those systems. So we want growth that is inclusive, growth that will create opportunities for our people. And that is what the city of Johannesburg is aiming for. Thank you very much.
Hello. MMC.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was concluding by saying we are aiming for growth that is inclusive, that will create opportunities for all our people in Johannesburg, all the regions of the city, opportunities for women, opportunities for PE entities, SMMEs. That the growth that we see should not be growth in terms of aggregate numbers, but it should be growth that is felt by our people. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, MMC Khoza. Very important indeed. You touched on very important issues. The economic recovery plan and the city's economic strategy. You also spoke about the state leading during the economic crisis. And what I am taking out from your presentation as well is the inclusive growth that we need to bridge the economic divide that we are having currently in our city. Thank you very much about that. MMC Masuku. Mr. Govender spoke about the importance of changing the way we deploy work, you know, the plan that we must have in deploying work, and also the skills that we need post-COVID. What skills, what competences, and also the importance of revisiting the policies and procedures that we are having, your skill development policies, revisiting. So I would really ask you, MMC Masuku, to indicate what challenges that have been faced by the workforce in the city under the lockdown, given that some would have lost loved ones, they would have been ill themselves. I can also imagine the anxiety they may have experienced with all the changes of working from home and still being expected to deliver in the same manner. Please just give us a picture of the challenges and the lessons learned, and also maybe indicate to some of the issues raised by the presentation of Mr. Govender in terms of the skills development. Over to you, MMC Masuku.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to the panelists and everyone that is connected. And good afternoon to those who are joining us on Facebook. Thank you for this opportunity, Madam Speaker. You know, as you rightfully say, the COVID outbreak brought about very devastating. I'm going to switch off my video just for the benefit of bandwidth. COVID-19 brought about very devastating and psychological effects for many employees in our city. You would remember that when the pandemic hit, the way we interacted obviously became different, and there was a lot of working online, and conversations became formal online. And this actually led to a spike in stress levels, where an employee, for an example, attends an online meeting, which is equivalent to giving a presentation, but now they end up being back to back. It therefore already starts creating a strain in one psychological, and you know, people want to work harder to prove that they're available. So a person, first of all, can be sitting in a Teams or a Zoom meeting from morning until evening. Majority of our employees that were in contact with our EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, presented with anxiety and panic disorder symptoms. And this was due to the fear both of being infected and being in contact with people who would be. And this was particularly for the frontline staff. We also received reported cases of burnout experienced, because people, it's unprecedented to sit and do so much work in you are focusing on a computer the whole day, but you are still processing documents and so forth. So there was a lot of burnout that we also received, particularly from management level up to your senior managers. There was also many symptoms shown by employees of severe depression, symptoms of depression. Some were just mild, but some were very severe, especially between April and May. And emotional stress was one of them. And that affected the work morale, and it impacted delivery in essence, because over and above all of this, our employees were under financial distress as well, because people were spending money on immune boosters. Some family members were not working, especially your low level. So maybe they are on contract or pay as you work kind of an arrangement. So you had employees having financial distress. Loneliness as well was one of the issues that brought down the morale in our city. And this was due to the stigma and the discrimination. Madam Speaker, you would recall, sadly, that one employee even committed suicide when he tested positive because he felt rejected by family members and was treated as an outcast by his own colleagues. And the work from home arrangement created like a feeling of loneliness. So you don't have that environment where you speak to colleagues, you see them every day. So it does create that level of loneliness. But we do have a very strong program of mental well-being where we assist our employees before even COVID, of course, our EAP program, which is based on ensuring, and it's derived from the National Department of Health Management of psychosocial stress and mental health awareness. And we used this to take as practical steps to reduce the stress, anxiety, the stigma, the disorder. And we also went further to create virtual trainings on grief and dealing with loss, and adding capacity in terms of understanding bereavement and understanding how to work outside teams, but as a person. So that was just as a precursor, but there were many challenges, and I won't go into all of them. But the fear of the unknown was there. People felt there can never be adequate PPE. So you become anxious, and you feel like you want to see PPE in abundance as an employee, rightfully so, because you want to be screened, you want to have sanitizers and so forth. So that was one. But other issues, I mean, you would recall, Madam Speaker, where you would have people saying, I need to get to this place, I need to go. But a small thing can irritate a person where they want to get into the lift, but the lift is full, 2 people, and the person is late and they want to rush to a meeting. So it was the small things that I'm just citing as challenges that employees brought to us, even labor, because we work with the unions. The unions came to us and presented some of these things. But what we then also, responding directly to your question, what we did as it relates to the work from home, we developed a work from home guidelines and etiquette. We had not yet reached the level of having a policy formulated. And I mean, people like from PwC are going to be instrumental in assisting us to look at best practice and how to ensure that we get the best policies. But what we did immediately as a department, we developed a guideline and an etiquette that would be implemented in the city. And the factors were tools of trade, connectivity to the city's network, availability during working hours, and a workspace. Madam Speaker, if I'm at home, people must not assume that, the city cannot assume that I've got a desk that I can use to utilize. So we had to grapple also with ensuring that if we are putting this work from home framework and etiquette, we create an environment so that people don't connect when they are sitting in the bathroom or they are in their bedroom. And also ways of dealing with potential disruptions, because when we're at home, it's your family space as well. But we also looked at a standard arrangement of the work from home framework and etiquette. We said we need to stick to the core business hours, except when there is an emergency of critical matters to attend to, because if we don't define the standard working hours for core business, then it will create this burnout, and people end up connecting, working from home online over weekends and extra hours. And we had to create an environment to ensure that line management, there's communication with line management, there's communication where you are able to monitor the work of employees, and professionalism remains. Madam Speaker, the way you are presenting yourself, for an instance today, it's an indication that you are fully at work. And employees, it took time for us to get employees to understand that you can't really connect for a meeting of the city. And all of that is part of the change management process and the psychological understanding that we had to take through, especially during level 5 and level 4. And the behavior, of course, of online meetings, and the mutual respect that comes with it. And of course, the deliverables, because service delivery is that. But over and above that, the lessons learned, as you asked, there's capacity to, Madam Speaker, we were able to keep the city afloat working. MMC Khoza will tell you, for level 5, 4, and 3, we worked at 33.3% capacity of employees in the city. But the city did not collapse. So it was a lesson for us to learn that you can optimize and use your workforce productively. And we also learned that going forward, we need to build the skills that will benefit our employees as it relates to particularly understanding technology, not just as a by the way for COVID, but as the future of work. And it came out from the PwC presentation when he was asking us about the technologies that we think are gonna be disruptive and the future of the 4IR. And I think it was for us very important that while we were facilitating the connection in a remote work environment, we must assist employees to still feel connected to the organization. So those online letters where the executive mayor would communicate, update people what the country is going through, update people what the city is going through. And multitasking was one of the things we also had to help our employees to learn. And with online meetings, we've been able to realize that time management is something that is actually need to be taught and trained to employees. We made an assumption that time management, everybody can do it. But with this online life, and like you then realize that you have to structure and teach people how to even manage their own time. Your last point about the future of workplaces, Madam Speaker, post the pandemic, which will be my last input. Genuinely, the city does need to look at reducing its administration property in terms of carbon footprint. In a post-coronavirus, it will be essential for us to invest in and to support the home office. It will be important for us to redesign the workplace and to create workspaces specifically designed to support the kind of interactions we need. You will recall many organizations moved from closed offices and moved to open plans, where open plans were the norm. But now you've got anxiety from employees who are refusing to work in open plans. Therefore, it means we have to rethink all those strategies, and maybe office space is not a priority, but now it's about creating working conditions at home that are suitable for employees. And cubicles, if we're going to use cubicles now, and how are we going to attend group meetings? But team meetings have proved to be better, and you are still productive without contact meetings. And then, of course, smarter working space where you just, if you need to connect, you just need to dock in and plug your computer and you go, if you don't need to be in the office. Another future of workplaces that we see, it's the need to relook at HR policies and review policies in relation to vulnerable groups. And vulnerable groups, Madam Speaker and colleagues, it's people with underlying conditions that are at risk, and though it means those people have to be prioritized, as well as people who are prone to contract the virus easily, especially if you are almost nearing the age of 70. And obviously, we need to increase the capacity of occupational health and safety. You know, the basic things of safety in a workplace, the washing of hands, the avoiding of shaking, the avoiding of touching each other and sharing meals, the getting used to the fact that if there's a meeting that is a full day, you must eat from a pre-packed meal or bring your own lunch, for an example. So it's things that we have realized that are doable, but they need to be instilled as a culture in every organization. And of course, ensure that every employee who works away from the workplace, other than at home, is provided with adequate supply. You know, I know how you would fight for counselors to get masks. So masks need to be a basic human right. A mask must be a basic condition that it's part of your package. A sanitizer must be part of my package as an employee, so that I know that when I'm at work, I don't have to worry about those things. And most importantly, it's understanding and showing our people that the health response and the response from the city to assist employees, including from the Department of Labor, the Department of Health, it's not about it's not dependent on the city only, but it's also dependent on me. And so we've also seen that we need to embark on awareness campaigns with employees so that they understand that COVID can be beaten, but the discipline has to be within you. It has to start with you so that you impart it to those who are next to you. But other than that, I think I've shared what it is that we experienced. And as I said, we are going to now move into the process of policy formulation of this work from home etiquette and guidelines, so that finally it goes through the city processes, clusters, mayoral committees, Section 79, and finally council, so that we get this work from home policy approved as a way of life post the pandemic. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, MMC. Indeed, you have raised pertinent issues, very important. You spoke about the need to redesign the workplace for post-pandemic. Also, rethink working conditions at home and rethink how workers would be productive at their spaces wherever they are. And how do we measure productivity? I think it is time that even management, MMC, people who are managing these employees, they have the change of mindset and adapt into the new ways of managing. Maybe now the description of a manager also need to change to say, how do you manage a person or an employee who is not in front of your eyes, who's not going to get in there and clock, and how do you manage employees and how do you measure productivity? I think there's a lot of change management that needs to happen. But thank you very much. Without further ado, let me request Sipho before we can go to discussions. Mr. Masiho, what are our viewers saying? Questions from our viewers. I am mindful of the fact that MMC Khoza has requested to leave by 5:30. I think we'll be done by that time. We are on 5:10 now. if we could just get what our viewers are saying, comments and questions from our viewers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Very interesting discussions, and thank you very much to all our presenters. And just a first comment here comes from CISO, says, lovely, lovely. Ahmed Kaji says, the digital fitness app does not send the login required to the email I provide. So maybe our first presenter there can respond to that one. Obishabangu says, I'm glad that the city of Johannesburg shares these meetings on Facebook with us, the citizens of the city. Faisal Pillay says, great discussion. Carl says, this has been a valuable discussion. Lesego says, as government or public sector, how do we use 4IR to enhance community-based planning or public participation? Andrew says, how does the organization ensure sound mental health post-COVID for employees? Nati says, mental health is a challenge people have had to deal with a lot in 2020. Kathy says, what is the role of leadership in ensuring that the world of work is one that is improved post-COVID, and what is the role of management? The second last one from Greg says, at university level, what modules or programs should students be taking to get these new skills so that they are relevant in the workplace? I think let me there for a minute, madam, and then I'll come back again with more comments.
Thank you very much, Sipho. As I hand back to the panelists, there are questions and comments from our viewers. I think in relation to mental health, Dr. Nyati will also assist there, because we've had the discussion on mental health before on this platform as well. So if we can just put those viewers up to speed on the problem of mental health. Yes, it is a problem indeed. Can I maybe give to you, Dr. Nyati? And after that, and as we respond to the questions, colleagues, I would request that we come with a way forward. Having heard what all the presenters have said, how do we go forward? What suggestion would you give the city of Johannesburg in going forward during this time and post the pandemic? How do we go forward? Thank you very much, Dr. Nyati.
All right, thank you, Speaker. It's been a very fruitful afternoon of speeches or insights from people who really understand the challenges that we are all going through at this point. I mean, all of us, because it's a pandemic, none of us is spared of the impact of this pandemic. But today, obviously, the discussions are around the workplace and specifically, in the COJ context. But I think what we need to understand is that we live in a country, South Africa, that's part of the world, and COVID-19 started in China, spread throughout the world, and the research that has come out has actually shown that in China, about 54% of the people who were involved in the research there, they reported severe psychological impact as a result of the pandemic. This picture was seen in the US. About 45% of the US people, and this is early days, when they did the research. In Canada, a similar picture was found. And also here in our country, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, they conducted a study around April and released results in May. So what that shows then is that the pandemic on its own has had that significant impact, presenting to people as anxiety, presenting to people as depression, you know. But we also need to be aware that before there was COVID, in the South African workplaces, there was already a high rate of mental health challenges. At least 1 in 4 employees, that is 25% of all employees in all South African workplaces, at a minimum, had problems of mental health. So over and above that, then you add what has happened as a result of COVID-19. You now have a situation where we are talking of at least 1 in 3 employees in the South African workplace have got a problem of mental health, which then means whatever programs that were there before COVID, they need to be relooked by all employers, because whether somebody is working away from home or working away from the office at home, or they are actually coming to work, we are all impacted, by this COVID-19. So it is therefore important that the employer, who has a responsibility in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, to ensure that employees do not get to experience illnesses or diseases as a result of the work that they do. So there is that added responsibility now for the employers to then go an extra mile to try and take care of their employees, so that they can be able to continue to ensure delivery of services to the citizens of Johannesburg. So my message here is we all as South Africans need, at an individual level, need to take care of our mental health, focus on those things that are within our scope of control, do something about that, but also accept that certain things are outside of our scope of control, and therefore let's not waste our energies on those things. We need to be much more caring. The issue of stigma and discrimination, to an extent that some employees commit suicide, is something that's unacceptable, but not something that is new. Like I had mentioned earlier, that 1 in 4 South Africans who are working have got a mental illness. That was a study from Stellenbosch by Professor Lund. And one of the things that came out there was that of the 25% of people who have got a mental illness, about 75% of those people have not sought help, have not disclosed to their employers because of fear of stigma, because of fear of discrimination. And so the lesson we should be learning now out of COVID is that we are all interconnected as human beings. We need to be our brothers' keepers. We need to be our sisters' keepers. We need to actually deal with the issues of stigma and discrimination. We need to be a caring, a society within and beyond workplaces. So I think the message is some of the inputs that came from MMC Masuku are very, very important in terms of how to look at better support for the employees of this city. So I'm actually encouraging her and whoever else is, is a key stakeholder to do more for the employees, because there's been so many people dying, colleagues dying, not having an opportunity to pay last respects because of COVID. Some people, because of the lockdown, you couldn't go and bury people in different places. So there's a lot of complicated grief that we are going to be seeing going forward. And so all employers must brace themselves. Whilst the physical aspects of the pandemic has been what has been a priority, but the mental health impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is actually going to be with us for much, much longer, for years, and bringing forward that 2030 we've always been talking about as the period when mental health will be the main reason for people to consult healthcare professionals. So the message here is COJ as an employer needs to up its game and do more to support its employees so that there can be sustainable delivery of services for all the citizens of this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Indeed, we need to be mindful of the psychological impact the situation presents and how we together as a people navigate through this path, because it needs all of us. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done by ourselves as a collective. Policy formulation is key and the digital divide must be bridged. I particularly took note of the slide colleagues made by Mr. Govender, where he talks about creating a sustainable revolution in the city, and I have noted their recommendations. MMC Khoza, as we wrap up, as you say your last words, way forward, where to from here, and how do we together navigate the path?
Excuse me, Speaker. MMC Masuku had her hand up.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I didn't see your hand, MMC. MMC Masuku.
So sorry, Madam Speaker. I wanted to actually say so that I don't forget. You know what Butfundile is raising. What I think must also be, we must also start to do, although there are regulations. Maybe we need, I love these online platforms, but we need people like him to assist us also in the city to now start doing the contact, you know, this, even if like it's a session with councillors, for example, or a session with a certain group of employees or JMPD. I'm just using that as an example. I can tell you, because of the impact and the assistance and the information that people in his profession have, and how he uses layman understanding for people, it will be important to start looking, obviously, within COVID regulations. I just thought, let me put that just after he spoke. Thanks.
Thank you very much, MMC. I get Upele, Uvile, Pele. There's an invitation from MMC Masuku to assist. And I agree with MMC. There is a great need for your skill and that transfer of information in assisting our workers, because the problem is bigger than what we just see, you know, with a naked eye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, MMC Masuku, for that. MMC Khoza.
No, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I think for our part, we are conscious of the fact that these are difficult times for our city, difficult times for the country. But politicians are not elected to lament difficulties. We're there to lead and to take this country out of the problems it faces right now. And for our part, in terms of economic development, regenerating the economy, we're obviously going to put in place targeted sector interventions, working in partnership with players in those particular sectors, be they services, tourism, manufacturing, to ensure that we put in place mechanisms, incentives, finance even, to ensure that there's life brought back to these industries, because they are very important. In a study that was done, Madam Chair, it was found that 31% of SMME business owners were not able to pay their employees and had to close shop. This economy needs the SMME sector, and we are going to pay particular attention to the SMME sector, work with them, assist them in many areas. There are areas where we need to intervene as leadership. It's unacceptable that SMMEs still lament the fact that they are not paid on time. And I think that we need consequence management, MMC Masuku, in the event that our officials did not pay SMMEs on time. There are issues of red tape. That is something that we need to look at. It's not something that is difficult in my view. Make sure that there are better turnaround times. Of course, we'll work with the province and TTI to ensure that some of the interventions are made at those levels. And of course, we've provided tax relief packages for our SMMEs. And of course, as I say, we then need targeted interventions for vulnerable groups or people that have been historically excluded from our economy, be they women, youth, Black people, those interventions need to be there because we can't have a growth that is not inclusive. And we are very clear that those interventions are going to be undertaken. For our part, Madam Speaker and other panelists, I think that the challenge is on all of us. The leadership alone cannot help us. The leadership must show leadership, but we must work with all the stakeholders to ensure that we reignite our economy. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, MMC Khoza. I won't repeat what you said, but thank you very much for that way forward. Let's hear Mr. Govender, Mr. Darren Govender. Way forward, what would you advise the city to take this matter forward? And how do we make our workplace a conducive workplace post-COVID-19?
Madam Speaker, yeah, thank you once again. And I've taken quite a bit of notes from both the MMCs. So certainly some key things that I've mentioned. The one thing I'd like to pick on is the strategic partnerships. MMC Khoza mentioned that it's important. The city mustn't be seen as trying to do everything on their own, because I think everybody needs to come together. And the partnerships I talk of is private sector, I talk of labor, I talk of civil society. There's some NGOs and NPOs that are doing magnificent work on the ground. How do we bring them closer and be able to form a strategy in terms of how we want to create impact in a consolidated
Okay, I'm not sure. I can't hear Mr. Govender anymore.
I think we've lost Mr. Govender.
Okay.
How much to be resilient during this difficult time. So I think it is critically important that there has to be focus, Madam Speaker, on leadership. How do we empower leadership to be resilient and be able to withstand these tough times, so that they support on that as well? I think, Madam Speaker, before I get to the last point, I think somebody mentioned a point around the DFA. We would send some details through to just, if there's a problem with the DFA, gladly we will try to kind of sort that out very quickly. Maybe it's a small technical glitch, but please, once again, please take advantage of that DFA, because it gives you a sense of where you are as an individual, but it also helps the city to see where they are across and how do you put interventions in place to support that as well. So, Madam Chair, I think I'm very encouraged by both the MMCs in terms of the deliberations and what's happening. But I think what's important is to take time out to say, we want to create a roadmap. What can we do? What's possible within the 3 to 6 months? Because the unfortunate thing is we don't have a crystal ball to say, what will the new future, what will the new way of working look like? And I think we're also conscious of the fact there could be a potential second wave. And let's not shy away from that. If that comes through, it places much more urgency. So I think it's important to take time out to immerse yourself in a scenario planning situation and plan for 3 to 6 months what can be done and what are the critical. Because I like what Dr. Nyati has mentioned, that you can't do everything, but what you need to do is focus on where your area of influence is and what you can do as a city. And there will be other concerns that we can't have control over. But let's take advantage of what we have control over and be able to make a difference in that space. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Govender. Indeed, if we work together, we can do more. We can turn around the whole world. Thank you very much. And thank you to Elizabeth for sharing the link on DFA, the digital fitness. Thank you so much. MMC Masugu, way forward. Let's hear from MMC Masugu. Your last bite. You are muted, MMC. You are muted.
My last bite. There was a point that Usipo also read from commentary from Facebook. I want to suggest the following, Madam Speaker, as jobs of the future, where there was a person who was asking what can we focus on now when we go to post-matric. I want to suggest that we need to encourage our young people to look at things like robotics software development, like your wind energy, your data analysis. I think data analysis is a job for the future for young people. Physical therapy as well as psychology, because with this new advent, Dr. Nyatuchilo Budfundile, psychosocial therapy is going to be a very important element. So our people, our youth need to start looking at that as well as obviously health and nursing. I don't think that we should think that this pandemic is the end. So we will need more health specialists, nurses, and so forth. So that's for me what I think should be we looking at as just as an example. And of course, I think I spoke about solar energy, because we need to start being friendly to environment and start looking at alternative means, especially now with the regulation passed that municipalities can now start producing their own electricity. So that on its own is a game changer. So those are the jobs for the future. But I think as a way forward, we have a lot to learn from each other. We have a lot to do as public representatives as it relates to changing the lives of people. You know, Madam Speaker, I was thinking, even when this the commentary about community-based planning, I was thinking about, are we going to, if let's say we move back to level 4, are we going to move to physical izimbizos, for an example? Or are we going to be able to do these imbizos? You had set the trend. Remember when you did the consultations for the IDP, you did the IDP consultations online. But how do we then, and for me, that is what we need to resolve as a way forward. In Orange Farm, if we could fill a hall of 5,000 people for public engagements, how do we get the input of those 5,000 people in the next processes of city planning, in the next processes of community engagement, so that their views are not lost in the process? And I want to suggest that we have to acclimatize ourselves to understanding that our people are not the same. So community engagements must still happen, but we must educate our people. We have to educate our people about COVID so that they understand that for you to be able to attend a meeting, you have to first adhere to this and this and that. So I don't think it's going to be easy for us to automatically shift from ordinary meetings to communication online. That's one. In the workplace, I think I've put it clearly that I agree with what has been put forward. And I think in the workplace, we are looking for more for remodeling the working environment, but also we are looking forward to learn best practice from institutions that have been doing it. I've been doing research about the International Finance Corporation, for an instance, who have offices all over, but they are able to have functional institutions. They work with different government organizations, and they don't necessarily have physical offices. So I've been also empowering myself with research to understand how their organizations are sustainable and are functioning, yet they don't have physical contact as with their employees. So it's a learning curve, and I think we are going to get there. And I think it's going to take us into a new journey also of discovering the possibilities that are there with technology. And thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity that you granted me and the platform for me to share my views as it relates to the future of the workplace and the challenges that we faced as the city of Johannesburg, challenges that we faced just when we got into office. You will remember that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, MMC. Thank you so much. Indeed, I guess even the young people who are still at school now, they have to think differently in terms of career paths, because there are many things now, jobs for the future that you have spoken about. Indeed, if we work together and we partner, the city of Johannesburg is the biggest city with more than 5 million population, and is the biggest city in the continent. And there's no way that we can work in silos. we need a lot of partners to assist and work with us. Chair of Chairs, as you do the closure and vote of thanks, maybe you can also make comments on the discussions that took place today and the way forward. And then you can thank everybody on our behalf. In fact, isiXhosa sithi Dr. Fundile sithi ixesha luchaba. So you know, time limit is an enemy. How I wish we could have more time for this discussion and also for the benefit of our viewers. But this is not the last day. We can still have more discussions on this. Thank you very much. Doc, do you want to do the last words before Chair of Chairs?
No. I think Chair of Chairs must play her part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Chair of Chairs, Councillor Mlaus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's another beautiful discussions that we have today, as usual, and with Dr. Nyati and Madam Speaker. You know, you are the furnitures of this program. You know, when you are just part of the furnitures, and the furniture that when we sit on it, we are very, very comfortable. Thank you very much for continuing with the talks. Madam Speaker, I'm not going to be long, but what I'm going to do is trying to say our three panelists talked about partnerships. All of them talked about partnerships. I think we need to continue having partnerships with other people that will assist us and give us more input on how to go forward, especially to make sure that inclusive growth is seen, and to make sure that as MMC Khoza is saying, and making sure that MMC Masuku, we look at those policies of working from home that you talked about. It's very interesting. I'm very interested in that as well, so that we can, because in all the offices, as you know, and all the legislature and in the executive, people don't all come at work at the same time. We need to find out how can we make it comfortable for them working at home. If we can have that, really, we will support you, MMC, in that, into looking into that. And then I want to even look at Mr. Govender. What you said, what I liked a lot about is it's your return to work planning post-COVID, for us to plan, and I'm happy you are going to share the slides with us, because I really want to sit down and look at your proposals on how we can go back to work, because we have challenges. We are trying to say 50% of the people should come, but what is it that what are they going to do? Have we planned? Did we sit down and think about how are we going to make sure that they become productive? Because as MMC Masuku was talking about depression and all those things, we are not taking those into consideration. We are just saying, come back as long as you are not 100%, we are 50%. And I would really like, Madam Speaker, to get more on this, Mr. Govender. I'm very much interested in that. And then thank you for the digital fitness app, and yeah, I was struggling to get into it, but now with the help of Elizabeth, I think we can be able to do it. Me, when you talk something, I go to it straight away. I like doing research quickly. I don't wait for tomorrow. If you talk to me and you say, Governor, I'll Google you. I don't want to tell you about who you are. I Google the people who speak whenever I attend anything. So that's me for you. But thank you very much for having that. I would like to take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, not to waste a lot of time, to firstly thank all our citizens on the platforms that have been provided to them. Thank you very much. Those inputs that you give us assist us to grow, they assist us to go forward as the city. And thank you very much. Keep on following Madam Speaker on these sessions. And we keep on bringing those inputs. They build us. And Mr. Govender, thank you very much for what you have shared from PwC. Thank you very much. MMC Masuku, our young MMC, thank you very much with your inputs. We know that you are there for the young people, and you really talk for the young people to be able for us to have them in the workplace, especially in the city of Johannesburg. Mr. Khoza, MMC, congratulations in the tough job that is facing you. And you've been in planning, and now you're in economics, and yeah, it shows that you are a tough guy. You are being given all these tough positions, and it shows that the mayor does believe in you, and you must take that in pride and really know that for someone to give you those responsible positions, that person really have trust in you, and hoping that you won't disappoint him. And the staff, Elizabeth, thank you very much. Keep on doing the good job that you are doing. The assistance that you give to this program is the one that makes this program successful. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. And Madam Speaker, I think I will end there. I wrote a lot of things, but due to time, we'll talk. We are politicians, and we have Mr. Govender, who really, I realize he likes to talk as well. And I'm like, hey, we are talking to, people that like to talk. We are all, and politicians, when we start opening our mouth, we don't stop. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To respect everybody, I would end there. Thank you. And good evening.
Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you very much, colleagues, Dr. Nyati, to yourself, Chair of Chairs, and have a good evening. And until we meet next week, Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Dr. Nyati. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you,
Madam
MMCs.
Speaker.
Thank you, MMCs. Thank you, MMC Khoza. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, MMC.